Bringing people in. All right, then. Good evening. My name is Kyle Stone. Welcome to our committee and board meetings this evening, June 14, 2023. A little after 6:20 p.m. and I'll make the requisite motion so that we can conduct our meetings virtually. Conduct this meeting wholly electronically. The Park Authority Board needs to make certain findings for the record to evidence our compliance with Virginia Code 2.2-3708.2. These motions address this compliance. I'm going to conduct a roll call and ask each board member participating in these meetings to say your name and the location from which you are participating. I ask that each of you pay close attention to ensure that you can hear each of your colleagues. Following this roll call, we will vote to establish that every member can hear every other member's voice. We will go alphabetically. Also, as the evening progresses, if additional board members join us for our meetings, I will ask them to verify their audibility and location. Abena, you're up first.
Abna Adu Houghton. I am joining from my home in Franconia District.
Great, thank you. Dr. Carter.
This is Cynthia Jacobs Carter, and I'm joining from my home in Fairfax as well.
Linwood.
I'm wrong. I'm Franconia District.
That's still Fairfax.
You should have caught me. I'll see you.
This is Linwood Gorham. I'm joining from my home in Lorton in the Mount Vernon Magisterial District.
Great. Tim.
Tim Hackman from the Drainsville District.
Ron.
Ron Kendall joining from my home in Mason District.
Faisal.
This is Faisal Khan at my residence in Providence District.
Michael's not here, correct?
Correct.
All right. James.
Jim's from my home in the Springfield District.
And my name is Kyle Stone, and I am joining in from my office in Fairfax.
And this is Tim again. Just to clarify, I'm at my residence in the Drainsville District.
What about Ken Quincy?
Yeah, I was
Oh,
gonna say,
sorry, Ken. Ken.
just like home, I'm ignored.
I wanted to make sure everything was comfortable for you.
Ken, I got your back.
Ken Quincy, participating from my home in the Providence District.
Okay, I didn't miss anybody else, did I? Maggie and Bill are absent excused from this evening's meetings. At this point, I'll pass the virtual gavel on to Secretary Dr. Carter so that I may heard to make the requisite motion. I move that each member's voice may be adequately heard by each other member of this board.
This is Cynthia Jacobs Carter, and you have heard the motion. Is there a second?
This is Tim Hackman. I second.
This is Cynthia Jacobs Carter. It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all of those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All of those opposed say nay. That motion passes.
Great, thank you. Second, I move that the Park Authority Board will hold an all virtual public meeting because circumstances warrant the holding of an all virtual public meeting, including but not limited to the convenience of an all virtual meeting.
Tim Hackman. I second.
Great, thanks, Tim.
So this is Cynthia Jacobs Carter. It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all of those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. That motion passes.
Third, I move that one, the Park Authority Board has not had more than 2 all virtual public meetings or more than 25% of its meetings rounded up to the next full number, whichever is greater during the calendar year since the emergency order was lifted. And 2, the Park Authority Board's last meeting was not an all virtual public meeting.
So this is Cynthia Jacobs Carter. Is there any discussion?
No, this is Tim Hackman. I second the motion.
So this is Cynthia Jacobs Carter. It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, All of those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All of those opposed, say nay. That motion passes.
Right, this is Kyle Stone again. As a result, I further move that the Park Authority Board conduct this meeting electronically through a dedicated video and audio conferencing line, and that the public may access this meeting by calling 602-333-0032 and entering access code 646450.
So this is Cynthia Jacobs Carter. You have heard the motion. Is there a second?
Tim Hackman, I second.
This is Cynthia Jacobs Carter. It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all of those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All of those opposed, say nay. That motion passes.
All right, this is Kyle Stone again. Finally, I move that the meeting of the Park Authority Board to be held this day is in conformance with this body's all virtual public meeting policy. And as such, one, the meeting notice indicated that the public meeting will be all virtual. And the notice stated that the method by which the Park Authority Board chose to meet would not be changed unless the Park Authority Board provided a new meeting notice in accordance with VA Code 2.2-3707. Two, public access to this meeting is provided by electronic communication means that allows the public to hear all participating members of the Park Authority Board. Three, audiovisual technology, if available, is used to allow the public to see the members of the Park Authority Board during this meeting. Four, a phone number, email address, or other live contact information is provided to the public to alert the Park Authority Board if electronic transmission of this meeting fails for the public. And if such transmission fails, the Park Authority Board will take a recess until public access is restored. Five, a copy of the proposed agenda and all agenda packets have been made available to the public electronically. At the same time, such materials were provided to the members of the Park Authority Board. Six, the public is afforded the opportunity to comment through electronic means, including written comments at meetings where public comment is customarily received. And seven, there are no more than two members of the Park Authority Board together in one physical location.
This is Cynthia Jacobs Carter. You have heard the motion. Is there a second?
Tim Hackman, I second.
This is Cynthia Jacobs Carter. Is there any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All of those opposed say nay. Mr. Chairman, the motion is approved.
Thank you, Cynthia. This is Kyle Stone again. Now that the preliminary matters are complete, we can begin the Budget Committee meeting. Reminder, when you begin talking, please state your name. Ken, the floor is now yours.
Ken Quincy, I will call the Budget Committee meeting to order. And I will ask Michael Peter to introduce the item.
Thank you very much, Mr. Quincy. This is Michael Peter, Division Director for the Administration Division. We celebrated at our last meeting all the wonderful things that happened with the budget. But we did have a key item that we discussed at the last meeting that we had agreed to come back and bring it up here for the Budget Committee for some more extensive discussion as we get into this year's cycle, which you'll hear more about next month. Next slide, please. If you remember, we went through some of the impact on the revenue fund of just the compensation changes that we experienced in FY23 and FY24. We were able to, as part of our budget planning, really catch up as far as fees were concerned with the net impact of the FY23 adjustments. But FY24, as you can see here, there's about $2 million that is not budgeted. That the way that the cycle works in terms of when everything happens from the adopted budget side, we've already gone through all of our revenue fund and all of our fee increase and adjustments. So we're ending up right now already with $2 million to the negative as far as what we were planning for this year. Next slide, please. So just to remind you what our plans were, we were really focusing on spreading across the board here. About $4 million is what our planning was for. So we could put some money into revenue stabilization, deferred revenue for summer programs, we talked about that, and our revenue sinking fund. But we only have about $2.7 million available. It's getting close to being cut in half. So the question is here, number one, where do we adjust? And then really, do we look at our system to potentially even adjust some of the fees, as Chairman Stone has talked about, to try to catch up a little bit and make the point that this impact, we were projecting about a 2 to 3% increase in personnel, and it ended up being a 5.44% increase. So we will always really be behind the 8 ball the way that we work through the revenue fund and the county works through the general fund process there, because it's not decided on until we get to May, and there's very little planning for the next fiscal year. Next slide, please. So then this is the question. And Chairman Stone, I believe you wanted to come in to talk about some different options here that we might talk about. But this is the central question. How do we deal with this? Do we just do with less in this coming year? Or do we look at some other options to try to increase revenue in the way that we are currently operating?
Is that where I'm supposed to jump in?
Yeah,
Oh,
that
yeah.
was the cue. Sorry, Kyle.
You need to beat me over the head with it more, obviously. I mean, I don't have, what I was looking for when I brought this up last meeting was, I mean, I don't have anything specific in mind. I just wanted to broach the topic of potential fee increases to cover at least some of the loss. Because, I mean, Michael, what are our other options? It's that, or we dip into our like rainy day funds. I know that's not what it's called, but that's all I can think of right now.
Yeah, that's basically our option. Of course, we just came out of being in the red for that for quite a while. So, you know, this puts us in a situation here where, you know, certainly we're projecting very good activity this next year. But the very first and biggest impact that we have, we've already worked with the county to hold those summer camp fees that are, you know, now at last year's levels. So, you know, what comes next in terms of fees? Certainly, we can talk about classes and other programs, and those are generally approved through Jay's authority. But then there's golf and rental fees and, you know, more of the administrative fees that come before the board. So at this point, you know, we're not in a situation where we can really pinch pennies. We're already operating at razor thin margins. So that's the question. Do we dip in, or do we potentially look at fees that could change as early as this fall?
I mean, I'd open up to the rest of the board. I mean, I feel like I made myself fairly clear last meeting, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, whenever that was. But I'm comfortable with the idea of moving forward some fee increases. What and how much, I don't know, and probably need to continue talking about that. But I don't know what anybody else thinks on the matter. I could be the only one who has any interest in doing this, at which point just move
Mr.
along.
Chairman, Tim Hackman.
Tim,
Thank you. I would tend to think that we don't have much choice other than to pursue some sort of, or at least look at potential fee adjustments. But I think the other question that should underlie that is perhaps that we should annually have a target, perhaps as a percentage of our overall revenue fund revenue of what our net revenue, our so to speak profit will be at the end of the year, so that we can have that as a touchstone or a metric against we would put the public and the county on notice that this is what we're going to target every year as net revenue, so that we can have rainy day funds, have sinking funds, and things of that nature, and be prudent fiscal managers of this authority. So that's my feeling about it. Set an annual target that is known to everybody, and to the extent that our costs exceed our ability to attain that, or the adjustments that the county is giving us don't allow us to attain that annual profit, then everybody knows that we only have certain levers that we can pull, and in this case, the likelihood is we're going to have to adjust fees.
Mr. Hackman, Michael Peter here. With the budget process, we have as a goal from this last cycle to try to achieve $4 million in net revenue for exactly
Correct.
that, to be
Right,
able to
exactly.
spread that around. And, it chipped away a little bit more, and then a lot more by the time we got to the adopted budget. So that's exactly the story. It's hard for us to be able to adjust fees this late in the game in general, since our fiscal year begins in the middle of our summer camp cycle. But you're absolutely right. I think this is one of the few levers that we have, unless we the board decides to forego one of the options for net revenue there, which I don't, I know from a staff perspective, we would not advise that, since we're still so razor thin in terms of what we've been able to save after the COVID time.
Right. No, I was aware that, this is Tim Hackman, I was aware that we had a $4 million target. And I was just saying that perhaps even to give some advance notice of what our target will be every year, if we had a percentage target that was tied to our anticipated revenue, that might further narrow the uncertainty. But no, I absolutely agree. We had a $4 million target.
Yeah, Michael, this is Ron Kendall. I'm kind of a mind that I really would prefer not to raise fees in the middle of a cycle. I think that kind of sends a knee-jerk reaction signal to people that we, that we haven't planned well enough at the beginning to take care of ourselves till the end. So you have to look, I guess, at those three funds that may proportionately need to be touched. But one of the questions I have is, I remember conversations over the last couple of years about moving items off of the revenue fund and into the general fund, because they had been at some time in the past moved from the general fund into the revenue fund. And those were supposed to be discussions that we're having with supervisors, or with at least the budget folks down, or the financial folks over at the county level. Have those borne any fruit?
So this is Jay Cole, Executive Director. So going back to when we projected out the 4 million, the projection was with the projected MRA for the county. So what happened was an unexpected increase that the BOS has voted on that got us to the roughly $2 million, over that we're now not able to put into our reserves or our revenue stabilization fund, it's important because we were wiped out with COVID. And I think that if we were having this conversation 6 years from now, when the stabilization fund is full, everything's full back up from COVID, I think that we can, we have a little bit more wiggle room. But with about $60 million in deferred maintenance that we need to do in rec centers, it really is, it really does hurt. We are working on the equity study, which is with the consultant that should be bearing at least some results to start talking about towards the end of the summer. But that's not going to solve our problem right now, because that's really a long-term strategy for how to move things into the general fund to lower our fees in the future, to help stabilize the revenue fund and lower our fees in the future. But if you look at the books, I mean, we're gonna come in at a positive balance. It's just not what it is that we projected that we needed for the revenue fund in order to take care of system replacements, pay back our reserves, do all that stuff to make sure that we are a, financially solid business.
Any other comments, questions?
Tim Hackman, if I may, again, just quickly. Jay or Michael, does the amount of the reserves impact our annual audit position at all?
It is not an audit requirement, although at the same time, with the Park Authority Board passing the recommendation that we at least have 10% of our general revenue in those reserves, the auditors do check to see what our progress is towards that, but it doesn't affect our rating overall. It's just more of our level of financial comfort from the board here.
Thank you.
Other comments, questions?
Yeah, Ken, I'll jump
Yeah.
back in.
Yes.
This is Kyle Stone, Bragg District. To Ron's point about it being kind of off cycle, just remind me when we normally vote on fees.
That usually happens in the period from it's really November to January, and then those go into effect in April. That's how we've yeah, thank you. Those go into effect as soon as we can get through them at that time, and the review of class fees and the different things that fall under Jay's purview, that's usually a little bit earlier in the fall, so it just doesn't really coincide with the county's budget cycle generally.
Should we
Questions?
consider having it more closely aligned with the county's budget cycle? Because we banked on a 2% MRA and that was built in. They did a 4%. And that's where kind of this unexpected cost came from. You know, we're pretty good at projecting, but it's very hard to read the Board of Supervisors' mind. And I would not want to be in a position, you know, I don't like the idea of being put in a position because of a decision they make that we then have to dip into our reserves instead of putting money into them and continue to maintain and enhance our own infrastructure. Because there's nothing that says they can't do this again in the future. We could get initial budget guidance from them in the fall that says 2% MRA, and then you do a 4, a 5, a 6, or whatever they want to do. So I understand wanting to maybe only touch fees once, but we also, to some extent, have to react to decisions a different board makes. But then beyond that, perhaps we should realign when we do vote on fees to a different timeline so that we see exactly what they are going to do before we make any decisions, as opposed to having to guess and then be caught, with our pants down.
Tim Hackman, just to clarify, we wouldn't actually be dipping into reserves this year. We would not be adding as much to the reserves as we would
Correct.
have
Fair.
otherwise hoped to do.
Yep.
So this is Jay Cole. So it's camps. I think that we can do something to that nature for other things, golf, rec center passes, it's camps that are always going to be a year off. Because we're setting camps this fall for FY25, for FY25, the beginning of FY25. So there's no way that we're going to know, and moving it up or back, we can't move it back past when the park takes comes out and the camp schedule comes out, because that's when we need to solidify what our costs are. So camps are, and the way that I describe it is sort of, camps is our government job and golf is our side hustle, right? We're hoping that golf is really good. We know camp is going to make us the money that we need. And so really where we would want to bank that money and make sure that we're whole is in camps. And that's always going to be off, a cycle with, and the only other, which nobody wants to do, is just randomly increase camps to as high as we can make camps costs, and you guys know how I feel about that, and then work everything backwards, and we don't have to raise fees later on after we know what the actuals are, which is something that we don't want to do, because our camps are already unattainable for some of our lower income residents. Part of the really making sure our fees are where they should be, this is sort of what ends up happening, especially with something like our summer camps.
Any other comments? questions?
Mr. Quincy, if I can just say one thing, we will be coming back to the Budget Committee next month as we really sort of work through what the county budget guidance is and putting together our schedule for what we would propose the whole process looks like this year. So if there's some direction for us to look at options and what could be considered and what we think could be moved around a little bit, we could report back at that time, Mr. Quincy.
You just answered a question I was going to ask. No, thank you.
And just to add on to what Mike just said, and I don't know what your question is, this is Jay Cole. Ken, the budget schedule has moved up a bit for the county. And so our budget is going to be due the second week in September. And so we're talking maybe the next board meeting, we're going to bring a timeline for the next budget cycle, but it might entail, asking very nicely, Chairman, for a meeting in August, because we're not going to be able to meet our deadlines in September with the budget because everything's kind of moved up for this year.
Thank you, Jay. Are there questions, comments? I just have one following up on what Chairman Stone said about some of this being out of our control and under the control of the Board of Supervisors. That just accentuates the need for us to talk to our individual supervisors, make sure they're fully aware of our position. Any other questions, comments?
Tim Hackman, along those lines, Ken, the other thing we had raised this year with the supervisors, and it would potentially help mitigate the problem that we faced this year and every year, is if there would be a way for the supervisors or the county to provide an offset to the increases that could help us on the revenue fund side. If that was done, then we wouldn't necessarily have this issue as well. So in our discussions, when we talk to them about the FY25 budget, that's another seed or a position that we could help to potentially reinforce.
Yes. Any other questions, comments? If there are none.
Yeah.
Whoops.
Yes,
I'm
this is
sorry.
Cynthia Jacobs
sorry.
Carter. What are some examples, if you would, please, of what type of offsets we might talk with the supervisors about, just to give some idea?
So this is Jay Cole. So I do believe with the revenue fund, we should factor in MRA because that's the way our revenue fund is built right now. So we should have an agreement, when we're doing our budget for when we're doing our projections for fees. So let's say that it's now or in the fall when we're doing projections for fees. Very open conversation across the street. What does it look like it's going to be this year? This is what happened last year. We don't make our projections in a vacuum. We talk and we know what the projections look like for next year, and that's how we put in the 2.5% or whatever it is that we put in. We need to make sure that they know that it's set in stone because of our camp fees. So that's what we mark it in. We do our projections. We're going for the $4 million in net revenue. If at some point later on, when happened this year, things change and MRA goes up to 4.5%, which is what happened, it's factoring in when they make the decision to go up to 4.5 that they make the revenue fund whole for that $2.4 million extra that they imposed. Great for our staff, but they imposed on the revenue fund. So because we agreed on a number, this is what we thought, and through events not our making or their making, it ends up being higher, 4.5%. That's really the only way that we cannot err on the side of higher fees. Because if we're never going to refund the sinking fund and we're never going to do that, then the next year we're going to be looking at $6 million to make sure that this doesn't happen again. And that extra $2 million we have to, impose on our user fees, which is something that we're trying to not do. And so I think that that's what Ken, I believe, is talking about, and just making everybody very well aware of what sort of the snowball effect
Right.
that it has.
Okay,
Right.
thank you.
Other discussion? Okay, we look to hear from you in the future, Mike.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Quincy.
Okay, if there's no other questions or discussions, I will hereby adjourn the Budget Committee meeting.
All right, Faisal, you're up.
This is Faisal Khan. I call to the order of Administration and Board Committee meeting. So Allison, would you please introduce the items?
This is actually Amy's.
I'm sorry.
Okay, that's
Mike.
okay. Good evening. This is Amy Vosper, Deputy Director with the Park Authority. And the purpose of this presentation is to give you a quick, very quick now, to get us back on track, update of the legislative year, and actually more importantly, to solicit any ideas for the upcoming year. Next slide, please. So you guys are pretty familiar with the process, and I don't need to read this for you, but we're at a point now where I'd like to just review some of the things that happened last year. Next slide, please. So the General Assembly considered over 2,800 bills and resolutions. 56 of those were referred to FCPA at least once, if not twice, sometimes even more. And 17 of those that somehow touched us, affected us, were enacted. Most of these new laws take effect in July 1, and staff is reviewing these bills to make sure that what kind of impact that we will have on FCPA in the county. That's something that both the county and the Park Authority does after each session. Next slide, please. So some of the highlights, I pulled out just about 2 or 3 highlights. In your packet, you have the 17 bills that passed that you can go into more detail in. And you can also go ahead and give me an email if you have any questions on anything else that's in the packet. But some of the more important ones were the local incentives for urban green space. And that gives the locality flexibility to kind of create and establish programs that might help establish more urban green space. And this was more on the planning side, reduction in permit fees or a streamlined process. But we hope that there can be other mechanisms in the program as well. And we'll keep you
Amy, a
posted.
quick question. Is all of Fairfax County and Tim Hackman, is all Fairfax County considered urban space for this bill?
I do not believe that's
Okay.
the case. So I will check on that and make sure we know the limitations. Write that down. Okay. Next slide, please. And I think that I've got a little slide later on, but years ago, the Park Board actually initiated some major discussions with the county and ultimately with the General Assembly on invasive species. At that point, they had developed a work group based on that first legislation. Now we're getting into new legislation or refined legislation to reconvene that invasive species working group and to create an invasive plant species list and update it regularly. They have a noxious weed list, but this is getting into more detail with the invasive species, not just the noxious weed list. So we're very happy to see this. John Burke and Laura Grape are involved in that work group. And if you'd like, we can come back and update you on that work as it progresses. Next slide, please. Something that is so exciting and has to be done in the next 2 months, I'm told, which we'll be coordinating with Allison, is some training for Park Authority boards and commissions, actually all the boards and commissions. So we we were now included in that training, in those training sessions. We have to go ahead and, excuse me, admit Mike back in. We have to go ahead and get that training scheduled. I will be working with Allison to figure out what that means, what it looks like, and we will be coordinating with your schedules.
Amy, this is a question on this. This is
Yeah.
Kyle Stone. Any possibility of getting park board members a county email address?
We can look into that and report back. If the board is interested and kind of ready for that step, yes, we can. That
Well, I
would
mean, I
help.
think it
That
just-
would certainly help in terms of
Okay.
the FOIA requests that come in.
Right, one, it would just make that a whole lot easier, but two, some of it is protecting individual board members. If you have an email address that is mixed, you do open yourself up to FOIA that spreads a little further than you may think. I don't know who has email addresses that are mixed versus dedicated just for this. Is something to think about, but just in general, it'd be a lot cleaner and easier from a transition standpoint. When one board member leaves, there's an email address that has a lot of institutional knowledge that just sticks there. So if
Okay.
So, Amy, if I may, so we've been having this conversation since I think the first time I asked this question was in 2012. And that's why when I joined the board, and the first thing I did was I made a dedicated email account. And I think this conversation is on the peripheries for over a decade now. And I think it's about time that we do something about it.
We are ready. It will mean that we will have some additional training on how to access those emails. This county has a kind of a authentication system. But we'll be more than ready with our IT staff to work with everyone to make sure. That was the only drawback that we could see in having that separate email address. But if we are ready, then we can make it happen.
All right,
great,
great.
thank you.
Yep. Next slide, please. So right now, it's that time again, development of bills during the summer. And so what we'll do is we'll solicit, everyone is soliciting ideas, then we package them, we get them to the legislative committee. The legislative committee asks us more questions, and hopefully some of our legislative ideas will go forward. Next slide, please. Just 2 items here. I just wanted to remind you that your ideas did work and were ultimately in some sort of legislation. So this was, I know it was a couple years ago before COVID, but you all were the first to really start to tackle invasive species. And that work group kind of was formed, and then that led to bamboo being restricted. So your ideas do come to fruition. Also, there was a couple policy statements that we were able to tweak to make sure that we had language in there to increase funding for development and rehabilitation for park infrastructure. Next slide, please. So we took this call also to our senior management team, and they had a couple ideas, and we just wanted to share those ideas with you tonight, get your feedback. If we don't have time for major feedback, we can have an offline discussion on the ideas, think about it, mull over it, and come back to me with ideas. Then we can come back to the next board meeting and present them as we've done in the past. There's one that's familiar with everyone, the resident curator legislation that would enable us not to have to lease back and forth this property. We have asked in the past, the state has not been happy about it, but we can always ask again. That's a thought. We also had a couple thoughts on land dedication and subdivision and re-subdivision. We'd like to kind of look into this further with our planning staff because development can't happen in the RPAs. So maybe there should be an easier mechanism to donate on the land to the park authority. That's something we might be able to look into. And also we've come across in DTA bidding when people are in default or properties in default and it's going to auction. The Park Authority has to bid like everyone else. And we'd like to see that since it's a government entity, a conservation entity, that we would like to see if there's a way that that legislation might be able to be changed. So those are some of our initial ideas for you guys to think about.
Amy, I have one question. It says we've asked in the past, but the state has been reluctant to change legislation for only Fairfax County.
Yeah.
But are there similar problems in other areas, other municipal areas?
I'll have to look and see in other states there might be.
Well, I mean, in other counties.
Well, we're one of the only ones that has a resident curator program. I think there might be one other. So we are kind of a specialty on this, and that's why it's been so difficult for them to really tackle this one.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
But we might be able to package it differently. And actually it's a new, there's some new people down there since the last time we've gone through this, so.
Okay, thank you.
Abena, you have your hand?
Yeah, I do. I just want to understand, and I know you said we've had this conversation. I don't remember it, so please forgive me.
Oh, years ago.
Okay, so it may be before my time. So this first point here, the process is if there is a property that we would like to enroll in the resident curator program, we don't do it directly. Is that what we're saying? And
so it's funny, there are properties that are the resident curator program are in the resident curator program that are on Park Authority land.
Right.
But the way the legislation was written, we actually have to lease the property back to the BOS, then who leases it to the resident curator. So it's a little discombobulated. Okay. So we'd like to clean that up if possible.
And do you know the rationale behind this current legislation? Why is that the requirement?
So I think Dave Budka is on the line as well. This legislation goes back 15 years now, 15 to 18 years when it was first came into being at the state level. So I'd have to go back and unless Dave is here on the call, which he was a little while ago.
Yeah, I am here. Yeah.
Dave Budka.
Yeah, that is correct. It goes back to 2014, Amy, and I believe it's because the Park Authority didn't satisfy the requirements that the original legislation had to be the administrative side of the resident curator. So the BOS was chosen as that outlet. So to change the legislation, we would need to look at changing that.
All right, thank you.
And again, this is Amy Vosper, but staff really think it would be beneficial to look at it again. It's been a long time.
The reason it would be beneficial is not only because it would save a lot of administrative steps that we have, but it also might get us to the point where we look at not having to have our curators have a property tax. So.
All right. So basically what you're recommending is removing this conduit and have a basically direct operation on that. And again, with all the benefits that he's referring to.
Right. Thus far, we had all of our properties have been only Park Authority properties. The way it was written, the BOS would be able to offer us properties that we could put in the program, but they have not done that yet. So.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Next slide, please. So we'd like to hear your ideas. We have a June 30th date, but I think we can push it to the first week or two in July. But we would need some time to kind of flesh out those ideas and make sure that they're strong and also come back and make sure everybody's happy with what we'd like to take to the legislative committee by the end of July. So please think about that. And if you have any ideas tonight, or if you'd like, due to time, to wait and email me, that would be great. Thank you.
All right. Great. So any comments and questions about it? Well, seeing and hearing none, I thought that Linwood was going to say something, but I thought it was just muted or something. But so seeing and hearing none, thank you so much, Amy. And I hereby adjourn the administration and board management meeting. Over to you, Kyle.
This is Linwood Gorham. I'm going to call to order the Park Operations Committee and turn it right on over to Kim Eckert. Kim, take it away.
Thank you, Linwood. This is Kim Eckert, the Division Director for the Park Operations Division. I am going to quickly run through some of the projects completed by the Park Operations team in the months of January through March 2003. Next slide, please, Allison. First up, in the Mount Vernon District, we have trail improvements in Gristmill Park. During this project, we overlaid the asphalt trails along Mount Vernon Highway, as well as the interior park trails. We also paved the stone dust trail to the playground and the basketball court. We replaced and added bollards, as well as created a natural berm by the garden plots. This project was funded by FCDOT Trail Renewals Funding. The cost was just over $77,000. The project manager was Karen DeVore, and the work was completed by Tibbs Paving. Next slide, please. Next up, in the Franconia District, we completed an infield renovation at Hoos Road Park. This work included laser grading the infield. We repaired some drainage, as well as replaced some sod in the infield. This project was funded by capital project funds. The cost was just over $22,000. The project manager was Mike Sines, our Area 4 Athletic Fields manager, and the contractor was Premier Sports. Next slide. Next up, in the Franconia District at Manchester Lakes Park, we completed a playground demolition and prepared the site for planning and development to install the playground pictured here. During this project, we removed the previous playground and support structure. We regraded the space and installed foundation for the new playground. This project was funded by the sinking fund. The cost was $3,200. The project manager was James Powers, our mobile crew manager. And this was completed by our mobile construction crew. Next slide, please. In Mason District at Glasgow Park, we completed another playground demolition and prepared the site for planning and development to install the playground you see pictured here. We removed the previous playground and support structure, regraded the space, and installed the foundation for a new playground. This was also from sinking funds. The cost was $3,200. The project manager was James Powers, our mobile crew manager, and the work was completed by the mobile construction crew. Next slide. In the Hunter Mill District, we completed a field renovation at Cunningham Park. This included laser grading the infield. We installed some new sod in the outfield, and this was in parallel to an irrigation project that was managed by the Planning and Development Division. This project was funded by capital projects funding. The cost was just over $17,000. The project manager was Michael Harris, our Area 1 Athletic Fields manager, and the contractor was Premier Sports. Next slide, please. Again, in the Hunter Mill District, we completed some facility improvements to the Frying Pan Farm Park facilities. During this project, we regraded and improved the foundation for the game bird pens. We prepared the site for the new pen installation, and then we laid the stone dust around the pens after installation. During this project, we also repaired some drainage for the duck pond and the horse pasture. This was funded by the Frying Pan Farm Park operating funds, just under $1,700. The project manager was James Powers, our mobile crew manager, and completed by the mobile crew construction crew. Next slide. Again, in the Hunter Mill District, we have trail improvements at Cub Run Stream Valley Park. During this project, we regraded and added a surge layer to accommodate the heavy equipment for the mill pump installation. This project was funded by operating funds. The cost was just over $6,500. The project manager again was James Powers, our mobile crew manager, and the work was completed by our mobile construction crew. Next slide, please. In the Sully District, We completed our Maston Brook Grant project at Chantilly Park. During this project, we renovated the batting cages and paved the trail to the batting cages. This was funded by the Chantilly Youth Association, just over $29,000 with a Maston Brook Grant match at $20,000 for a total cost of $49,169. The project manager was Walter Wesley, our Area 5 manager, and the work was completed by Long Fence and Area Crew 5. Next slide. In the Drainsville district, the unexpected at Lewinsville Park. So we had a vehicle collision that caused some dugout fencing damage. So we had to replace our dugout fencing. This project was funded with county construction funds. Just to confirm for this group, we do submit a claim to risk management, to county risk management, so we are reimbursed for those funds. So the cost was just over $18,000. The project manager was Oliver Antiquo, our Area 1 manager, and the contractor was Long Fence. Next slide. Again, in the Drainsville district, the unexpected at Kemper Park. We had to replace some court fencing due to wind damage and a downed tree. This was just over $1,800. The project manager was Anthony Leon, our Area 1 Parks manager, and the contractor was Long Fence. Next slide. And now I am going to turn it over to our project manager, Russ Davis, to just review a very unique relationship that we have established with the National Park Service. Take it away, Russ.
Thanks, Kim. Good evening, everyone. Again, I'm Russ Davis. I'm a project manager with Park Operations Division, and I'm excited tonight to be able to brief you with regarding a unique opportunity that we in Park Ops and Dave Bookta and the RMD team have been pursuing. As we perform maintenance, repair, restoration of our park facilities, finding qualified, skilled, and talented contractors to perform work for us is a challenge when it comes to our historic properties. Not so much when we're talking rec centers and regular park facilities that we have covered, but when we get to historic things, it's a whole nother picture. In the past, we've not been satisfied with the quality of work performed on those facilities, and we have tried numerous avenues to achieve the level of performance that we would like and our historic sites deserve. Last year, we learned about an organization within the National Park Service that's based in Frederick, Maryland. The organization is called the Historic Preservation Training Center and is staffed by full-time National Park Service employees. The categories of specialties that these NPS employees represent include maintenance preservation specialists, historic masons, historic carpenters, historic architects, exhibit specialists, project managers, construction managers, and numerous other support disciplines. The Historic Preservation Training Center travels throughout the United States in support of the National Park Service sites and facilities. We visited with the Historic Preservation folks facility in Frederick and discussed their capabilities and some of our needs. We also learned that as part of their mission, they provide training while their tradesmen, craftsmen, and artisans are completing work on various NPS historic properties that are in need of repair. In this way, the NPS maintenance and tradesmen are grown internally. They provide this training in all the projects that they are tasked to perform. This became an interesting component when we heard this so that we could use those same skill sets and transfer those to our own Fairfax County Park Authority maintenance trades and other workforce members. They would receive this valuable training. And fortunately for us, the Historic Preservation Training Center did express interest in supporting us with their workforce at our historic sites. I think one of the reasons they probably are is because they're based in Frederick. They typically travel throughout the United States to work on National Park Service sites. So for them, this would be a chance to do their daily tasks that they do, work for us, and still stay at home. Historic Preservation Training Center, even though it's a fully functioning member of the National Park Service, is not centrally funded, as is most of NPS. They are a 100% reimbursable organization. What this means is that payment for their service only includes the actual salary of the worker used for a particular project, along with a small overhead rate that they charge. Given this, we feel we would pay lower rates than we would typically see, with the added benefit of training for our employees during the time that the work is being performed. For us, this is truly a win-win. With that said, and I am thrilled to announce, this is where we insert drum roll. On May 17th, 2023, we signed an agreement between the Fairfax County Park Authority and the National Park Service Historic Preservation Training Center for a period of 5 years to provide the services and training that you have just heard about. So I'll take it back to you, Kim.
Thanks, Russ. That
bet.
concludes the projects. That last presentation there will support many future projects with the historic site. So I'm happy to have it. So any questions for Russ or I today?
This is Ron Kendall. I had two questions, one for the historic preservation folks. Is there any need or interest in having a site-specific location in Fairfax County that could be dedicated to historic preservation? I'm trying to think if that would help us as either training or as a place where they could do some of the tasks that would be required for the buildings or the structures that they're working on. It's just a conversational piece, I think, that we could carry forward at some future date. The backtracking to the projects, does that mean that there is no install of a playground at Glasgow at this moment? Or have we completed that and that's just on your next report?
That's completed.
Okay.
So I'll try to answer the question if I can for the Park Service. I believe the way they like to do this rather than and they actually do some trainings in a shop where they would display a certain technique or a masonry skill. They do like doing it in the field where they're actually performing it on a historic structure. And that's the way they typically hold their training sessions. And that's part of their charter that they do that, the training piece as part of their organization and the way they're structured and set up. So I think they would prefer to do it on a real site, but we have plenty of those and that are in need. So
I have.
Yeah, that raises
I'm sorry, Cynthia.
that raises another, Tim Hackman, that raises another question just quickly. Do the sites on which they prefer to work have to be national historic sites as opposed to county or state historic sites?
no, they do not, and they are very interested in the sites that we've talked to them about. We have about 15 that are what I'll call premier historic sites in the county, like Sully, historic Huntley, and we already have a couple projects that David Bukta has lined up that those will be the first couple out of the box. We haven't started talking to them yet and met on site, but those are some of the first two that we'll do.
Perfect, thank you.
You bet.
Cynthia, you had something?
Yeah, so how historic does the site have to be? Over 100 years, anything like that? I'm thinking of a certain site in my district, at any rate. Do you know?
They don't have to be that old. Most of the ones that we identified in what we're calling our premier historic sites are in excess of 100 years, but we do have some that are younger than that we could include or have them do work on. But it has been a challenge. I mean, we have really struggled to find, particularly in the masonry skill set, with people selecting, the right color of mortar, the right style, the right formula. And Park Service is very, very, very good at that. So we're excited to get them in here.
Can I have your name? I can't see you. I don't even know who's talking.
Yeah, it's Russ Davis.
Okay.
In email, I'm russell.davis.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have anything for Kim and Russ? Seeing no one else, thank you very, very much, Kim and Russ, for your thorough but efficient presentation this evening. Does anyone else have any business for the Park Operations Committee? Seeing none, I'm going to adjourn the Park Operations Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Linwood.
Thanks, Linwood. This is Kyle Stone. Amy, Allison, we haven't had anybody join since I read through everything, correct?
Correct.
All right, cool. Then I will call the June 14, 2023 Park Board meeting to order at 7:21 p.m. Ben, do we have any speakers signed up this evening?
Mr. Chairman, this is Ben Boxer, Public Information Officer, and we do have one speaker signed up to speak this evening, and she is joining with us. I'm pleased to introduce Toddy Carnes, who is the president of the Friends of Historic Huntley, for up to 5 minutes.
Thank you. Honorable members of the Park Authority Board. At your last meeting on May 24th, Mr. Michael Peter briefed the impactful role advocacy has played in increasing the Park Authority's budget these past 2 years. While I am proud that my friends group, the Friends of Historic Huntley, and other park friends groups have initiated and pursued pro-park advocacy, we cannot achieve maximum impact without the help of each and every one of you in working closely with your supervisor. Of the many positive outcomes achieved in the process leading up to the recent adoption of the county's FY 2024 budget, the most meaningful was not any specific allocation of money. It was something systemic, a means of doing business year after year that holds the promise of appropriate funding for our parks next year and all the years to come. It was the Board of Supervisors' express statement that your respective supervisor wants to hear from you about Park Authority budget priorities prior to the county executive's development of the annual advertised budget. This is the greatest advocacy opportunity of all. Having the people best informed on Park Authority matters, yourselves, talking directly to the budget decision makers, the county's supervisors. Last year, at a budget town hall meeting, one of the supervisors indicated that he didn't know whether the Park Authority was adequately funded. Please, let this never be the case again, that a district supervisor does not know what the Park Authority's budgetary needs truly are. While friends groups can assist in that effort, it is you who have the position, and with it, the credibility and inside information to concretely present the Park Authority's needs with authority and informed context. You can plant the seeds of budgetary needs, which friends groups can then water with our advocacy. The budget is finally adopted, and the supervisor's express request for your future inputs demonstrate the possibility that together, Park Authority board members and citizen advocates can ultimately grow the Park Authority's budget to one truly capable of supporting a world-class park system. You can inform your respective supervisor of Park Authority funding needs, and we can help persuade the supervisors as a collective to fulfill them. The respite between budget cycles is a brief one. While we catch our breath before the next one begins, we at the Friends of Historic Huntley take this moment to thank you for your work this past budget cycle and to offer assurance that we will be there in the next one, advocating for the full and proper amount of funding that our parks, their dedicated staff, and county residents deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Toddy, for joining us and for sharing those remarks. Chairman Stone, that is the only individual we have signed up to speak this evening.
All right, thanks, Ben. Thank you, Toddy. All right, this is Kyle Stone. Moving on to administrative items. One and only administrative item this evening is the adoption of the minutes from the May 24, 2023 Park Authority Board meeting. Do I have a second?
Tim Hackman, I second.
All in favor? Or
Aye.
Aye.
discussion? All opposed? All right, that motion carries. Action items. Action item number 1 is appointment of Harrison Glasgow to the Fairfax County Park Authority Foundation Board. Do I have a motion? Or second, excuse me.
Tim Hackman, I second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. Action item number 2 is Park Foundation FY 2024 fundraising projects. Bobby, are you here to present this item? Yes, there you
Yes, Chairman Stone, I am. This is Bobby Longworth, Executive Director of the Fairfax County Park Foundation. Nice to see you all. You'll see that Action 2 is the list of Park Foundation fundraising projects for fiscal year 2024. You'll note that we have them categorized, and you'll see in the second column, priority projects are starred. We have a description of each project and a fundraising goal. It's important to note that this is not a limit, but a goal that is included in the respective budget for our revenue for the upcoming fiscal year. Those priority projects include unrestricted funds, of course, that are flexible in funding Park Authority programs and also paying for Park Foundation expenses. And we also have the very exciting Mobile Nature Center Equity Outreach Program that is already up and running. And we are welcoming funding for that, while we wrap up the capital campaign for the Stewardship Education Center STEM features. And we still have that because it does continue into fiscal year 24. We also will continue the priority projects of Rec Pack Summer Camp, of course, and the all popular summer entertainment series. If you'll see that we have continued other priority projects, Allison, if you could go to number 2, trails, of course, is one of our priority projects. We know that the need is there and the use is great. We will continue to fundraise for these other projects listed herein. And the Park Authority Board of Directors has approved this list as of May 16th. We are looking for Park Authority Board approval as well. And keep in mind also that this is not a limitation, that the Park Foundation is certainly able to pivot when other programs become priority and exceptional opportunities come about even mid-fiscal year. Any questions or comments?
Bobby, I just have one question for you on the Mobile Nature Center.
Sure.
We did receive a grant from CF Nova, correct?
We did, yes.
Okay, but that's just for the outfitting, and the money you have earmarked there to the goal to raise is for the actual vehicles themselves, right?
That's correct. We're going to keep it flexible so that there is flexibility in a vehicle. We're trying to find an in-kind donation if possible. And so we are looking to raise these funds. Also, the outfitting of the vehicle will be needed, and we're leaving it flexible. So if the Park Authority needs programming, supplies, in addition to those grants, that whatever is needed can be used for that, along with equity outreach.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, this is Kyle Stone again. Do I have a motion to approve these suite of projects?
Yeah.
Dr. Carter,
I'm
you're on
talking,
mute.
I'm on mute. Sorry about that. This is Cynthia Jacobs Carter, and I move that we approve the Park Foundation FY 2024 fundraising projects.
This is Tim Hackman. I second.
Any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. We have 7 information items this evening. The first information item is the Fairfax County Park Authority Foundation's set of fiscal year 2024 meeting dates. Information item number 2 is the Ellie Doyle Park Service Awards as presented to and reviewed by the Awards Committee on May 24th. Information item number 3 is the Parks, Recreation, Open Space and Access, or PROSA Strategy Project Update as presented to and reviewed by the Planning and Development Committee on May 24th. Information item number 4 is the Planning and Development Division Quarterly Project Status Report as presented to and reviewed by the Planning and Development Committee on May 24th. Information item number 5 is the update on the Garden Plot Program as presented to and reviewed by the Resource Management Committee on May 24th. Information item number 6 is Deer Management Plan as presented to and reviewed by the Resource Management Committee on May 24th. And information item number 7 is the fiscal year 2024 proposed capital improvement plan changes as presented to and reviewed by the Budget Committee on May 24. Chairman's matters, I will keep it very brief this evening. Just remind everyone, we have the Juneteenth coming up on Monday, and there are several celebrations at parks over this weekend. I know there's some things going on at Sully, and then Frying Pan Park is a big Juneteenth celebration on Saturday. Is that the 17th? So if you are available and can make it out to any one of those, it would be great to have you out there. With that, Jay, all you.
Thank you, Kyle. Allison, can you pull up? Okay, so here are some highlights. First, Bobby was just talking about the Mobile Nature Center. And as reported, we have secured a grant for programming and supplies, and the Board of Supervisors supported staffing, and all we need is the vehicle. And so Park Foundation is raising money to either seek a in-kind gift or monetary support that goes towards the Mobile Nature Center. Next slide. So, Allison, are we playing a video or no? Forgot.
It's up to you. I can stop the share and then share the video, or you can talk to the slide first, either way.
Okay, I'll talk to the slide first. So we finished CAPRA today. Actually, we finished CAPRA, our audit. CAPRA folks were here, well, not virtually here, the last 3 days. And I have to tell you, I cannot be prouder of, and I know they're going to be uncomfortable, the woman I just asked to organize me, Allison and Sarah, and all of the other staff on the call. I have never, this is usually a sort of heart-stopping, stressful time. I've never heard anybody wax so poetically about how phenomenal our staff are, so much so that our final closing meeting with our CAPRA auditors, I think that the actual time was only 8 minutes. So it was such a short closing meeting. We recorded it. We're just going to show you a few minutes of what they said, because I can't express enough how awesome it is. Go ahead, Allison.
Give me just a sec.
I guess the first thing I'd like to do is just start by saying a huge congratulations and thank you for all of the effort that you and your team have put in over the last, however long this has taken you to actually put together the last 5 years. The amount of time and effort that you guys have put into this is notable. We can tell from a review perspective all the effort that's been put into this, and it's just very appreciative to us. Special shout out to Sarah and Allison and everyone that we met with this week, and Amy and the 30 other people that we've talked to that just really gave us a whole lot of context around what we saw in the submission. Part of the good part about the virtual visit that we get to do is we have access to your information pretty well in advance of the visit, so we can get our work done sooner. The bad part about that is it's a very flat review. We just see documents, we see processes, we see policies. And speaking with you this week and to talking with you and watching the videos that you've done, and really we got a real sense of who Fairfax County Park Authority actually is and why you do what you do, which adds an incredible amount of depth to the review process for us, both as professionals, but also as CAPRA reviewers. I want to take a quick minute to shout out Cord and Joy for their assistance in the visit. They've done a great job. They put in a lot of time and effort into getting us here today. So thank you guys for that. Let's see. So a couple notable things, and I'll also open this up to Cord and Joy if they want to toss anything out there to the group. I think overall, what I've seen as being most impressive with your agency is how intentional you are with what you do, whether that's an initiative like equity, or whether that's a program, or whether that's, putting a plan together and then actually implementing the plan. We can really get a sense that you allow the subject matter experts to drive the bus, but also give plenty of time and space for everyone else that could be impacted by a decision, a process, a policy, to get on that bus with them and make sure that we're all kind of rowing in the right direction. So it's very noticeable from our perspective as, 3 random people that have never been there. But we can tell that's how you operate, and that's a really, really interesting thing and really great to see. I think your PROSA work is amazing. The way that you guys utilize and engage volunteers is commendable. And I think every opportunity that you have to bring the community to the table is something that we all strive to do in our professions, but you guys are really maximizing that within Fairfax County. And so kudos to you. Joy, Cord, anything you guys would like to add?
I pretty much covered it all. I was just impressed, and I will say that it is apparent that you all talk the talk and walk the walk daily, and it is kudos to the team and leadership, because it showed through this CAPRA review that you all are a great agency, and just continual good luck on your strive for being a CAPRA accredited agency again. Thank you. It's been a pleasure this week.
Yeah, you guys were awesome. It was a pleasure to get to meet you and learn a little bit more about all your facilities and everything like that, and the passion. It was clearly just within everyone as far as the mission and the values, and it was really inspiring to see. So I appreciate you guys taking the time to meet with us and give us that additional information.
Jay, I want to also thank you and appreciate you for your time and effort that you as the leader have put into this process, your buy-in and backing of this process, as well as your willingness to give your staff's time and attention to this process. It's really impressive, and it's good to see. So thank you for that.
So we just wanted to, I know it's thank you. Me saying it, it's just different when you hear it from other people, specifically when, you know, it's people from the outside who've never been to this county, never seen anything. When we say, you know, Sarah likes to say the gold medal is a beauty pageant, and CAPRA is really an intense job interview, right? CAPRA looks under the hood to see whether or not, you know, we really have that strong foundation. And, you know, I can say it, you can say it, but it was, I'm speaking for staff, so reassuring to hear other people just talking about, they reported on how easy it was. And, you know, there was no coach. I mean, everybody was just so on point this week. And I could not be prouder. We were so proud. We invited everybody who was involved in CAPRA to attend that final meeting. They don't go that smoothly pretty much ever. They were complimenting us from the beginning on how well Allison and Sarah and staff got all of the information and how easy it was to go through everything. It was just absolutely phenomenal. So I want to thank Sarah and Allison. Allison did a lot of the lion's share, well, both of them did a lot of the lion's share of pulling everything together, but every single person on that call, we had meetings all week, every day on the hour, staff coming in to meet with them and them asking questions and us having, you know, every single answer. So cannot stress enough how absolutely proud I am of everybody. And sorry I took a while, but they don't go that way pretty much ever. Next slide. Okay, so we had our inaugural Employee Appreciation Day last week, 2023. It was a phenomenal day. It was very smoky, and we were worried that people were, you know, we gave them the option to come and get food and go home because of air quality. But, you know, under the trees and under the pavilion, it was actually a perfect day to not be, you know, working a mower or out in the field. So we had a huge, enormous turnout. Everybody got to eat lunch. We had a trivia contest. I mentioned the trivia contest because I won the trivia well, my team won the trivia contest. So on the left, that's my team. Our name was 9 Dudes and a Lady. I was lady, and we won the trivia contest. So that's Area 4. Gentlemen from Area 4. It was just a really fun day to just fellowship and talk to each other and everything. No speeches, no pomp and circumstance, no nothing. Come and get some grub, you know, meet with people. It was just a great day. Next slide. Internships, I'm very proud of the work that our HR group has been doing in really having a formal internship program where interns come in. They have somewhat of a formal process for coming in. That way they don't feel like they're out in left field someplace. They know each other. And so they had an inaugural social last week. It was fantastic. It was networking opportunity. They introduced all of the senior leadership was there to talk to them about the things that we do. We've hired about 25 summer interns this year. And again, this is a pilot project for our new paid and unpaid interns. And we're really trying to provide this pathway to a career at FCPA. So that was great. Next slide. Good, I get to get away from my face. Summer entertainment series has begun. So as you all know, more than 180 free performances are happening at 20 venues. Please go online to get the schedule for when your concert is happening in your district. And we're very excited to start the summer with a whole lot of concerts and children's performances. Next slide. We had National Trails Day. We celebrated it at Lake Akating Park with the Akating Stream Crossing. So we had a ribbon cutting for the Akating Stream Crossing. As Chairman McKay and I said, unfortunately, Kyle couldn't make it. Unfortunately, Congressman Connolly had an emergency meeting. And unfortunately, Supervisor Walkinshaw had COVID. So just Chairman McKay and I held it down that day, and it was the quickest pomp and circumstance you could find. We cut the ribbon, and then Chairman McKay, it's a successful project when the chairman turns around and takes it for a spin. So that's him in the middle right, who went for a run on our stream crossing. It was a wonderful day. There was guided nature hikes, trail rides, self-guided geocaching, history, talks, information exhibits. It was a really, really successful day, and the crossing is beautiful. If you're in the neighborhood, please go and look at that project. Next slide. And thanks for all the staff who built it. It is some summertime. So we opened up the water mine. I have to say, again, I'm going to give a lot of kudos to HR for getting it done, specifically Luca. We are the #1 splash park, water park in Northern Virginia via TripAdvisor. The #2 splash park in Northern Virginia did not open on Memorial Day because of staffing, but our staff got it done. And so it's largely due to these photos here in the top right. As I say all the time with the water mine, it takes 80 people to open the doors. It's a monster of an operation between security, point of sale, lifeguard supervisors, concessions. And so every day that we open, roughly 80 people have to show up to work. And so kudos to staff for getting all the employees together, and also for making the opening very smooth. It's 26th season at Watermine. And the bottom picture, bottom left and right is MLK Pool has opened. We have 3 outdoor swimming facilities that all open Memorial Day. So you've got MLK Pool in the bottom right. And on the left, you have our special harbor, the splash pad at Franconia District Park. So, which was voted 2nd best splash pad in the nation. And MLK Pool. So MLK Pool had 120 swimmers on opening day. Our special harbor had 650 on opening day, and the water mine had 2,000 during opening weekend. Next slide. And the same day, I went over if anybody sees anybody on that slide that they recognize who happens to be absent but excused today. The Capital City World Outdoor Racquetball had championships at Stratton Woods. And so I went out to check that out and watch these really phenomenal racquetball players. As I put on my LinkedIn, everybody has pickleball, but only the cool kids have outdoor racquetball. And so this was a really great event. Every single court was full. They had chairs. They were sitting out there all day. They came from all over the place, Chicago, California, as well as local. So that was a really awesome event as well. Next slide. And that's it. Sorry, it was a little long, but I definitely wanted you guys to hear all of the kudos for staff.
Thank you, Jay. All right, then we'll go around the horn. Linwood, you're up first.
Like to take a moment to show my gratitude, appreciation, try to overcome some of my guilt for calling Amy Vosper so many times in the last couple weeks. I feel like I've probably asked her to do a full-time job worth of things. Sorry, they kind of all came at once, Amy. Thank you very, very much for not yelling at me and being attentive as you could possibly be with all the Capra stuff going on and everything else. But I genuinely feel guilty. I really, really appreciate everything that you're doing. Even staying till 9 o'clock last night at an Overlook Ridge Park with the South County Federation. So anyway, much gratitude, Amy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Linwood. Ken?
Just wanted to follow up on Jay's presentation and give kudos upon kudos to the staff for the Capra accreditation and the very positive comments that you heard. It's well deserved, and we know there was a lot of work behind it that the staff does every day to reach this point. And it's worthwhile just to acknowledge that. And all those comments that you heard from the Capra representatives are things that we already know. We know what a great staff we have, but it's nice to hear, as Jay said, from an outsider. I pass.
Thanks, Ken. Ron?
I guess I wanted to cover the summer concerts are kicking off. We've got Wednesdays, Friday, and Sunday night concerts all summer long. Specifically this Sunday, we're going to have Tom Paxton at the Mason Amphitheater. We would expect, if it's not going to rain, we're going to have 400 to 500 people come to that concert. I want to thank Cheryl White and Suzanne Frankenberg for the work they've done putting the concert schedule up and running for us again. And I hope to see them at the concerts, and I hope some folks can come out as well. I also did a Mason Matters for July with Penny Gross last week, and I want to thank Ben Boxer for providing me with background on all the Mason things that I don't know. I was surprised that there were a few things that I hadn't remembered that were happening in Mason. So I thank you, Ben, and that's it for me.
Thanks, Ron. Tim?
Thank you, Scott. Tim Hackman. My impression of Park Authority staff is they're all in. They're all in. They're into their responsibilities at whatever level, and especially the headquarters staff. They go to work. They're at home. One never knows what may come up, what you may have to handle. So I greatly appreciate our staff for being there, for handling what comes up. And we are so blessed to have them. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Jim?
Yes, following on with that, I congratulate the staff on the Capra work. I know that particularly that being recognized by your peers is, not only an affirmation of the fine work you're doing, but also just a pleasant kind of experience when it turns out well. So congratulations to the staff.
Thank you, Jim. Abena?
I wanted to say thank you to staff, Jay, and your team for all the work you've put in that led to this very successful accreditation visit, and also for all the hard work that you demonstrated with the different events and activities going on through the park system. So thank you all so much.
Thank you, Abena. Cynthia?
So this is what happens when you're last. Everybody says everything you were going to say. So I'll say it anyway. I want to say kudos to Jay and to her awesome team. You all make us so proud. And Jay, your leadership is second to none. We thank you. We thank you all. And I am very grateful to the staff for all the great work they do. For example, the Manchester Lakes Playground. I'm going to go and check that out this weekend myself. Maybe take my grandkids out there so they can do a little test run. Also, I want to remind everyone that Allison is doing such a great job, and her team getting ready for the LA Doyle Awards. And I want to remind everyone to get your nominations in. And that's all I have for now. Just kudos and thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. Faisal?
All right, so Cynthia, you and I are the last one, I'm the last one here. So now, well, not only I second all the words, all that's been said from, by my colleagues about this achievement and all that, but having lived with this family for over a decade, I've seen this in person. And not only the hard work and effort that we see day in, day out, it's the decisions we make at every level of this organization, starting from the board all the way down, and that reflect in the outcome. And major decisions make major impacts. And I'm so proud of the recent major decision we made that resulted in this star that we have, and that carrying on the baton. And good job, Jay, with what you're doing. And this is what was expected of you, and you have not disappointed us.
All right, Faisal, thank you. Do we have any other business to come before us this evening? All right, not seeing any. I will then adjourn the June 14, 2023 Park Authority Board meeting. See you guys in 2 weeks.
Bye.